Welcome, fearless leader.
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Lima Charlie, loud and clear. All right, you got plenty of questions, and you, I'm sure, got plenty of updates. So take it away.
Okay, well, tonight is the final battle. About midnight, my time here in Alaska. We'll be getting on to midday in Europe. And, well, actually, it'll be morning in England, and it will be getting on toward noon in continental European capitals. So those who attempted to steal my identity and use my name and to pull off all of these things that were beneficial for the British Empire and against the interests of the American people have been caught. And I look forward to getting past this particular little end run that failed. And we will all be on to bigger and better things in the near future. I do have about 25 hours of work that I need to perform in order to finish off the legal and lawful presentations. So I'm going to have my nose ground off here for the next few days. We also have new pending public laws to be considered by the assemblies. We've gotten to a point where our understanding of the situation and the way that this particular group of subcontractors has been operating has become clarified, and we now need to take some steps to put an end to the worst abuses via our own actions. And so that is also part of what's on my desk, is to complete the background and the actual wordsmithing of these new public laws. I am hopeful that everyone will see the reasoning behind each and every one of these suggestions, and that in the end we will all wind up triumphantly passing these measures, which will then allow us to stop a considerable number of the methods and means that they have been using to prey upon our people and create confusion. So that's the purpose. And it will also put an end to legalized mercenary warfare. And that will in turn mean that they can no longer base their mercenary operations on our soil. They will no longer be able to pull off their little deceit and claim that they're defending us when they go attack the people in Kuala Lumpur for no reason. And they will no longer be able to exercise illegal press ganging and conscription on our soil, which is what we all call the draft, euphemistically. They can draft their own people until hell freezes over if anyone is willing to retain a citizenship that requires that of them. But they can no longer come in and draft our children. And so I think that these are measures that everyone will readily agree to and understand. There is one measure which calls for adding the word unincorporated to all our business names. And the reason for that is surely to protect our business interests from their commandeering and their impersonation of our unincorporated businesses as their incorporated businesses. And they are supposed to append the description incorporated to each and every business that is enfranchised. But as you will notice, they have not done so, and as a result, they have been successfully substituting their British Crown Corporation franchises, naming them after our businesses and using that as a means to latch on to our business enterprises and cause the kind of trouble that we have recently seen with the Global Family Bank. So to put an end to that once and for all, we are appending unincorporated to our businesses to draw a line in the sand and give sufficient notice to everyone that no, we're not British Crown franchises. No, we're not Roman municipal franchises. We are exempt, literally exempt from those presumptions and associations and obligations. Now, what does exempt mean? It means that if we wish, as the employers of these yahoos, to participate in commerce, we already have an agreement with them allowing us to do so. And it does not involve citizenship obligations. And it's the same with the territorial U.S. When we say we're exempt and we know what we are talking about, they have no choice but to learn and listen. And this is part of the entire problem that we've had here, is that at the lower level, at the local levels, people are ignorant. So we have to not only educate ourselves and educate our families, but we have to educate those who are supposed to be working for us. And this has always been the challenge, and it continues to be the challenge more than anything else. Because for the most part, these people do not mean to harm us. I mean, Joe and Andy down at the local police station are not sitting there trying to figure out how they're going to do evil to their friends and neighbors. They don't even realize that they're doing anything evil to their friends and neighbors. Their ignorance is what is preyed upon first, and then that causes them to wreak havoc and cause problems for everybody else. So it's our job, unenviable as it is, to teach ourselves, to teach our children, and to teach our public employees what their proper role and limitation really is. Now, this is a process that is ongoing at the local level, and it is also ongoing at the international level. And of course, that's where my pedal hits the metal. I have been targeted with one of the most absurd slander campaigns that I've ever heard of. But it again, if the targeted audience for this is ignorant people, and they still don't know their way from a declaration to a constitution, what can I say? They are making themselves targets because their ignorance leaves them wide open to be preyed upon, but they are also being used as a flock of flying monkeys for the architects of this system, and they don't realize that part of it either. Now, people who think that they live under a constitution don't even understand what a constitution is. A constitution is a service contract, in the sense that these governments have constitutional monarchies, or they have constitutional democracies, or whatever. When you see constitution attached to some form of government, then you know that you're dealing with a public service contract of some kind. And in this public service contract, there is someone or something that is the employer. You have someone or something that is the service provider, the employee. And it's really quite simple. Does the employer live under the Constitution? No. The employer is required to pay the employee. The employer is reasonably expected to give the employees direction. But other than that, no, the employer does not live under the Constitution. The people who are employed, the public employees, live under the restrictions and demands of the constitutions. And that should be perfectly obvious to anyone who sits there and thinks about it for even 5 minutes. Yet I find myself constantly having to explain this to large numbers of people who haven't spent the 5 minutes. To them, the Constitution is some sort of all-purpose sacred cow, some sort of special document that they don't understand but which they reverence, a document that they don't enforce but which they nonetheless have this almost religious attachment to. And, I can't really explain it in terms of the phenomenon. It's sort of like somebody worshiping the TV because they don't understand how it works. It's like, oh, this guy comes on every day at this time of day and he's in this newsroom and he tells us all this news that we can't verify. Let us all bow down because we don't understand how a TV works. Well, it's the same way with the Constitution. People haven't been taught the most basic facts about the constitutions, and they haven't bothered to sit down and really think about it and discern how the constitutions operate, or who's employing whom, or any of the most basic things about the constitutions. So we've got that level and kind of ignorance going on. They don't even know that the Constitution is a service contract, and they're not the employees that live under that Constitution. Anyway, that is the kind and level of ignorance that we're dealing with here, people. And it's you, me, the chickens, and the gatepost. It's up to us to open up their eyes, observe the obvious, and say, hey, Joe, do you get a paycheck from the government as a government employee? No. Well, then you're not living under any constitution, friend. It's the people who are living and getting a paycheck from Uncle Sam. It's the people who are getting a paycheck from foreign service providers like the state of Washington or the District of Columbia. Those are the people that are obligated to observe the constitutions and perform the services. We're the other guys. We're the employers of these yahoos, and our part, beyond paying their salary, is giving them directions. So hello, it's time for a little self-governance here, and it's been like pulling teeth to get this far, to the point where we have the 50 states up and standing, the states of the Union anyway, and we're working on the Union states. But this is the fundamentals of the whole situation. It's just grotesque amounts of ignorance. And it's up to us to change that for ourselves, for our assemblies, for our families, for our local people, our communities. And bit by bit, we're chewing our way up the food chain to make it heard and felt and seen in halls of power far away from this country. The investigations that are taking place tonight are taking place in places like Switzerland and France and Germany. They're taking place in Britain. They're even taking place in Israel. All over the world, people have awakened and they're asking questions, and they are the only thing I can think of to describe it is they are waking up. They're coming back to consciousness and seeing what's right in front of their faces. And this it's unsettling. Okay, it really is. People don't want to wake up. They're like teenagers that don't want to wake up and go to school. Learning all this stuff about our government is the last thing that many people want to do. And yet it's the most important thing that we can do. And it is urgently, eminently important that we do it. Just today, I got this long screed from someone I've known for a long time about the need for enforcement. We need enforcement. Well, so I observed to him that we don't have any enforcement, and the reason we don't have any enforcement is that our public employees, which are all incorporated entities, they're all, part of the British Crown or the Roman municipal lash-ups, have taken our tax dollars and purchased the services of all these private security services called police departments for themselves. Okay, so that's the first part of the story. If you've ever been in a national level disaster of any kind, say a wildfire like I suffered in Big Lake, Alaska, or like the Hurricane Helene victims suffered in North Carolina, one of the surprising things that you'll learn is that instead of being helpful, the state troopers and the local police are among the worst offenders in terms of being of any assistance. They have a tendency to do things like put up roadblocks and prevent you from getting to your house, and they cluster around public buildings to protect public buildings, but they do nothing to prevent looting of your homes. And there's a reason for that. It's because they are actually employees of a foreign corporation, and that foreign corporation uses its employees that are really your employees, right? They're paid for with your money, right? But they use these employees to protect whatever the corporation values as the corporation assets, and to hell with you. And they have done this for so long that they think that that's the way things should be. And they have had nobody else standing there telling them any differently. Because where have you been? Absent. Presumed lost. Missing at sea. Okay? So here I am. I'm explaining this to my friend who is shouting and raging about we need enforcement. And I said, well, you see, here's the deal. We have every right to enforce our Constitution. We have every right to enforce our public law. But we have to provide ourselves with our public courts, and we have to volunteer as deputies of those courts and provide our own enforcement. And this is what just absolutely flabbergasts people. You know, they see all these courts and they assume that those courts are their courts and that that's what their money is going to support and that this is their justice system, when in fact it is not and never has been. In the past 165 years, it hasn't been anything like our courts. These courts do not practice common law of any kind except military common law. All right. They do not practice American common law. They don't pretend to practice American common law. So at some point, somebody should be grabbing their chin and going, I wonder where all the American common law courts are. Well, folks, for most of the last 165 years, they only existed sort of apocryphally whenever the justices who are running these other courts needed to pull something together in order to do something on the land jurisdiction. And suddenly they all became volunteers and put together a sort of a on the fly American common law court. You know, put their bar cards in a dish for the evening and acted as American justices. There have been very few examples. I would say not more than 10 in every state in 165 years where we've had that kind of a spontaneous decision over some particular issue for these bar association members to strip off their bar association garb and act as American justices. And it's doubtful that they can even do that with any legitimacy because, of course, they are bar members. So, the state of American jurisprudence, American common law, is that it's almost dead because of our failure to pull our own courts together, practice our own law, and provide our own law enforcement. And believe me, I get that thrown in my face when I'm out talking to people in other venues, when I'm talking to these diplomatic circles. They do not hesitate to tell me that, oh, you people are so stupid. Why aren't you taking care of your own business? Why are you blaming us? You've always had the ability to set up your own courts. Why don't you do it? Are you too stupid? I mean, you want to complain about what our courts do and what our courts say and how our courts function, but you don't have anything going on your own behalf. And after all, they're just common law courts. They don't have to know all the ins and outs of 80 million statutes. They don't have to know any special legalese language. It doesn't require a whole lot of extra learning to administer a common law court in America. So why aren't you doing it? And what is my reply? Well, we are doing it. We're forming up our jury pools. You know, we've got our state assemblies in motion. They're all in session. But if you want enforcement, and we're all agreed that we need enforcement, then why in the name of God is it that it's so hard to get 50 groups of people to come together and find 30 individuals who are qualified to act as jurors and start your own courts? You have to have your courts in order to have enforcement. If you don't have your courts and you try to start with the other end and just start with enforcement, then you get accused of being insurrectionists. Then you get accused of being vigilantes. And that gives the Pinkertons every excuse they need in the wide world to do things like they did in Waco, Texas, and Ruby Ridge. And that's not where we want to go. We want enforcement, but we have to settle up and ante up and realize that we have to provide ourselves with our own courts, and we have to provide ourselves with our own enforcement. We have to enforce our law. Hello? You've heard it all your life about self-governance. Well, do you see any other selves standing around here? One of the most frightening things for me at the beginning of all of this was to stand there and realize that it was just me. It was just me and my husband, the two of us. Okay? I want you all to think about that tonight. And I don't want you to feel despairing about it. But I do want you to open up your minds. I want you to realize that you can't have enforcement without your courts, because if you go and think you're going to just build up your militias and all that kind of stuff, no, that's just going to make you vulnerable to charges of being rebels and insurrectionists and all the rest of that kind of crap, and they will really enjoy crushing you. That is not the game you want to play. You want to get your courts organized, and then you want to deputize as many members of the community as is necessary to enforce the public law. And meantime, we're working on getting some updated modern public laws on the books so that we have a body of public law that is useful for us in the modern day facing modern issues. For example, chemtrails. There's nothing on the public law about chemtrails. When people were enacting public laws in the past, such things didn't exist. So this is a new generation. We have a new world with different problems in it. And we're going to have to adapt our public law and expand upon it in ways that allow us to address these things. But we essentially need our courts in place. We need our deputies signed up. We need our sheriffs elected. We need people to realize that if you want a different life, you're going to have to earn it. If you want a different country under a better, different system, the system we're supposed to have, then you're going to have to be the ones that make that decision and are determined enough to do the outreach, to do the education, and to make this happen. Now, right now, I am struggling over the fate of half a dozen assemblies. Two of them had charismatic leaders who retired, and the people just can't seem to get over the fact and get on with life. Well, you're going to have to, because there's only one assembly in each state, and you are part of it. I keep coming back to this very simple fact. There's only one assembly. And the other very basic point that I keep coming back to is it's a public institution, which means it's not a private club. It's not Joe's assembly. It's not Ralph's assembly. It's not Gina's assembly. It's the assembly belongs to the people of your state. It belongs to you, each and every one of you. And so what's called for is a different spirit, a spirit of community action, not small-minded turf holding and turf building. That's part of the other system. That's part of the competition and the division and the compartmentalization that you've all grown up with and that you're all indoctrinated in, but which you need to turn aside from very consciously and say, no, that's not where we're going anymore. We have a different kind of government, which is inclusive, which is public, which honors everybody's right to say what they want to say, think what they want to think. Okay, we have got to get together. There has to be a sense of urgent community. I mean, if you see a tornado coming straight at you, and this is, we're in that sort of situation, that kind of energy, where one of two things are going to happen, and either way, it's going to be very stressful, and we're all going to have to pull together. So make your very best effort to do that. Make peace. And we've got at least one assembly that seems to think that all they have to do is come up with a militia of guys with, homemade bombs and stuff like that are just going to get into trouble. There's a reason why the Constitution says a well-regulated militia. It requires all of the other functions of a state assembly to make that militia valid and lawful. You can't just throw together a militia and call it an assembly. You have to work on your general assembly. You have to work on your business assembly. You have to work on your jural assembly. So, as you can see, in addition to all of the things that I have to deal with out there in the wide world, all of the different things that are truly international diplomacy issues, international law issues, I get stuck with adult people who somehow or another are still reacting in this turf battle mentality of, it's mine. No, it's not. It's ours. It's not a private club. Say that over as many times as is necessary. The assembly is not a private club. It's not a group of cronies. It's not here to control power. It's not here to coerce other people. It's not here to be at all political. The only politics is what's good for the majority of the people in a community. And that does not have any labels. There's no Republicans. There's no Democrats. There's no conservatives. There's no liberals. That's their system. And it's on us to leave that system behind, to recognize its features. Because otherwise what happens is you think, Oh, great, I finally found my government. Ah, yeah, the ideals of independence and personal freedom and, not having to labor under these huge, heavy taxes and, not having to worry about police units showing up, knocking down your door in the middle of the night. It feels so good to be home. And it does. Right until you stop and catch yourself thinking in terms of conservatives and liberals. Right until that moment when you catch yourself thinking in terms of Republicans and Democrats. Right until that moment when all of your experience in this other kind of government drives you to seek a spot on a vetting committee or an oversight committee or anything that sounds like a bottleneck of power where you can contort things to your will instead of serving the public good. That's the difference. You see, in their world, in their government, it's all about them. It's all about them having prestige, them having controlling power, them getting money out of this system, them, parading around in the streets, patting themselves on the back. There isn't one element of real service in anything that they do. It's self-service, it's egotism, it's narcissism on display. And we get affected by that. But we owe it to each other and to ourselves not to fall into it. It's not our assembly in the sense of it being possessed by us. It's our assembly in the sense of it being a public institution belonging to all of us collectively. So stop a minute and take in the view. We've got huge, huge, unimaginable challenges in front of us. Every single person that comes into an assembly is a precious resource. Every single one of us has experiences, insights, skills, abilities, things that we have brought forward that we can contribute, if we're inspired to contribute, to the good of the whole. So if your assembly isn't fostering that kind of open, welcoming atmosphere, if you are not busily developing a great outreach program, if you are not thinking in terms of what you can do to evaluate new people and how to help new people find their niche where they can best contribute, you sure should be. This is something I've been harping on for years now, and it's only going to get worse or better because you're going to get more people in. And we desperately need to have that kind of outreach and have that kind of evaluation going on to help people find their seat at the table, help them join those committees, help something progress. Okay, well, that's been my message for the last 2 weeks, and I hope it's landing on open ears tonight, and I hope that your hearts are open too, because we must get to the point where we all have a vision of public governance again. Okay, well, Shannon? Do we have questions? I'm sure we do.
Oh, we got lots of questions. We're backed up on questions. Let's hit it. The hospitals are murdering people, and keep people unhealthy on pharmaceuticals. So why should the Alpha Omega Trust be used to support these institutions if we are all heir to a health system for our benefit? If not hospital supported, then what kind of system would the Alpha Omega Trust be made for? New centers of healings, who will start them? How do we apply for funds to start new healing centers with frequency healing, salt baths, and sound healing, and more?
Well, obviously, that's part of the entire depth, breadth, and scope of healthcare. Healthcare spas, massage therapy, all sorts of things can be funded using the Alpha and Omega Trust funds. But they need to include health. Whether it's chiropractic or it's frequency healing or it's natural medicinals, or whether it's discovering the secrets of nutrition and applying them. Those are all valid things. Whole tone music is a health therapy that can have dramatic effects on people and plants. So, there's nothing wrong with funding health initiatives, public health education, specialty services for geriatric patients, and hospice service. There are so many things that we could do, cradle to grave, that would make for healthier, happier people. And those are the sorts of things that the Alpha Omega Trust is supposed to do. It's supposed to be spent on healthcare. It's not supposed to be spent on general relief. It's not supposed to be spent on cronies. It's not supposed to be spent on military budgets. It's for health care. Okay? So, these trust indentures, for the most part, are very simple. When people have written their trust indentures, 90% of them are very, very simple. They say things like, the assets of this trust are to be spent for care for unwed mothers and fatherless children. Okay? Simple. Or they'll say something like, the assets of this trust are to be deployed to save the wild horses of the Western United States, to build facilities and provide veterinary service and rangeland and habitat for wild horses. It's rare that you see a trust document, a big trust document, that has an indenture that's more than 2 sentences long. Most of these huge trusts have got very compact purposes. They're not naming 15 different things. And in the case of the Alpha and Omega Trust, it's for healthcare, and healthcare is variously defined as institutions, education, provision for healthcare providers. But it's simple. And there's nothing mysterious about it. And people need to read those trust indentures if they're going to be trustees, right? Because a trust, in its very essence, is where you are trusting someone else to do something with your money, and you're donating your money, your land, or whatever else it is that you're donating into that trust, you are trusting someone else, known as the trustee, to do what you tell them to do with that money. That's what makes it a trust. And yet we have trustees all over the world who apparently think that it's okay for them to do whatever they want and pay no kind of attention to the trust indenture at all. The Davila Trust is a really good example of that. The entirety of the trust indenture is summed up by to end poverty and ignorance. How hard is that to think of? How difficult is it to decide in your mind whether something is going to take a stab at poverty or take a stab at ignorance? Yes or no? Does it fall within the parameters of the trust? Those are very wide parameters, okay? But still, that's the indenture. That's what the money has to be spent for. But we have people out there who are just hog wild thinking, oh, well, we don't have to pay attention to that. Those people have been dead for 500 years. It's still their money, and it still hasn't been spent on what they wanted it spent on. Okay, and I'm just the knothead to stand here and go, I don't care how long it's been. It's still their money. It's still their trust in us to spend it for what they wanted to spend it on. So I'm afraid I'm kind of a renegade trustee, but I'm a responsible trustee in that I do pay attention to the trust indenture, and I insist that whatever the expenditure is should reasonably be within the intended parameters of the expenditures of the trust. It seems so obvious, right? Oh, we have a trust. We have this thing called the trust indenture that spells out how this money's to be spent. Oh, and even though I'm like the 18th generation of trustees here, all of whom never spent the money out of the trust on the things that the trust was supposed to be spent on, I'm still standing here going, what? This trust has been in existence for over 500 years, and none of the trustees have performed. None of the trustees have actually, battened down the hatches and said, okay, this is what this money is supposed to be spent for. This is what we're going to do with it. This is what we see. We see trustees who don't act as trustees. We see trustees who claim the position, but then don't actually carry forward on that job. And that's part of what needs to be corrected. Just like the fiddling around with the Alpha Omega Trust. Everybody who has any right to say anything about that trust knows that it's for health care. And yet, why do I have to be the one that lifts her little lily white hand and says, no, you can't spend it on polo courts in Kazakhstan. No, you can't spend it on that. That has nothing to do with health care. I mean, there are days when I just want to get up and slap everyone silly. With all the best will in the world, I just have my days when I hear things like that, and I just want to grab people by the neck and shake until dead, because it is so outrageous that they would even think that they could spend money intended for healthcare on a new casino. Mental health for gamblers? I mean,
Stronger drinks.
stronger drinks, yeah. You know, this is the sort of thing that we have to deal with. It's wrong thinking. It's a kind of illogical. Just 1 second, I have to take this.
Okay, ready for the next one? Oh, she's on the phone call, everybody. All right, if anybody's looking to donate to Anna, if they want to send an email to the same email you're sending all these wonderful questions to, we can take care of it and I can talk you through it and get it all set up. We need to give Anna a few minute break here. I'm sure she will be right back. Or call me and tell me what the emergency is.
Shannon, I'm back.
I didn't notice.
Anyway, we have to start spending these trusts, and we have to spend them according to what people wanted them spent on. At least that's my position.
Okay, next question. For us new members, could you please explain our relationship with the Global Family Group and the process of verifying our documents? Because I've done everything I'm supposed to do, and it's been a month and a half, and my documents are still pending. I sent them 2 emails asking them to be verified and haven't responded. I've asked my assembly, and I've gotten mixed responses about the verification process or period, giving me different time frames as to when the documents should be verified. So at this point, I'm just seeking clarification. Thank you.
Well, you put your intention forward, and that is a key point. So technically, when you put your intention forward, that establishes the date for you, so you don't have to worry about that. The problem is that Global Family Group and Global Family Bank have been commandeered into a different jurisdiction, so they no longer can really serve as an appropriate place to publish your land jurisdiction status. So the best thing to do is to go to your assembly land recording office and record directly with your assembly. Okay. While we are busily working on correcting things and getting a better system booted up, ready to go for our people, because obviously when Hunter went over to the dark side of this equation and decided to create a mirrored bank and call it the Global Family Bank and attempt to commandeer our bank, it created a large amount of disruption and a separation of assets. And we, to avoid any confusion or leave any, leave any liability for ourselves, we have taken down the American chartered Global Family Bank. We tore up the charter, we fired Hunter, and we have made a line in the sand distinction between it and us. And so there'll be probably a couple to 3 months here while we are getting our feet back on the ground and solving the problem whereby our bank could be mirrored and commandeered into a different jurisdiction just on the say-so of an employee. That's never going to happen again. In fact, we are taking action now that will forever prevent that kind of substitution fraud and commandeering action ever happening to any American business again. And in the meantime, we are bringing forward the complaint internationally against the bank that is mirroring us, which is an act of fraudulent impersonation, knowing aggravated identity theft. And we're going after Hunter, and we're going after the banking authorities that encouraged him in this grave error. And we're working on a better system. We have a brilliant IT team that is working on creating an entirely open source system for us. Hunter's source, although he bragged about it being, totally his, it turns out that that was not true either. He was dependent on some aspects of the current Microsoft empire. And we are correcting that and getting everything back to something approaching the vision that we had for Global Family Bank. But it won't be called Global Family Bank when we come out of the closet again. It will be under a new name, new management, and it will be a better system. It'll have better IT. It will all be open source, and it will have better security, and it will have a better automated system. So get ready, folks. Sometimes these things happen and you look at it and you go, damn, why couldn't it have just been such a smooth thing? Why couldn't we have just done what we set out to do? But oftentimes there is that silver lining, and we have certainly learned some things that I'm glad that we now know, and that we are able to change, and that we can make better, frankly, than anything that was commandeered away from us. So my best advice right now is go to your own assembly and get in contact with your coordinators and your land recording personnel, the land recorders in your state, and go directly. There's no reason that you have to use some other service. And just wait a month or so, and before you know it, we'll have everything restructured and rolled out and ready to go.
Okay, the next questions is actually 2 questions for you, but I think I'm actually probably better equipped to answer the second one, so you go with the first one.
Okay.
Will an arrest warrant be issued for Hunter? Oh, hush, dog.
Well, any one of the assemblies could come up with a grand jury and indict him, but you would have to be careful and look at what you could indict him for, because right now the things that he's accused of are, on one hand, not actionable under federal law, or are things that really don't apply to us. So, we could certainly get him for fraud and commandeering. We could get him for identity theft. Things of that nature we could actually bring forward an indictment on. But the things that people think that he did, okay, let's just very briefly go here. Back in 2009, the Federal Reserve System trademarked the Federal Reserve System was bankrupted. And so that left me with the question of, well, if it's a bankrupt entity, how in the hell are we trading on notes issued by them? Right? We're trading using IOUs issued by a bankrupt entity. I mean, that's worse than an IOU from Uncle Ernie, right? So it does turn out that all these Federal Reserve notes have no value. They literally have no value. And there have been several federal court cases where the judges have come right out and said, Federal Reserve notes have only symbolic value. They have no value, literally. So you can steal large quantities of Federal Reserve notes, and you can't be brought to terms for the theft because they have no value. And I know that seems very strange to you, but that is nonetheless what the law has been for quite a few years. And it's one of the ways that the banks are getting ready to seize on all the funds that you have in them that are designated Federal Reserve notes, because they can steal all your money and they can steal anything they can lay their hands on that is denominated as Federal Reserve notes with no consequences. Okay, so that's point one. Point two is that some years ago, I can't remember how long ago, but something like 2016, quite a few years ago, the banks put out this itty bitty tiny little notice in the fine print in the back of a pamphlet they sent out to all of their customers saying that anything that's deposited in these banks belongs to the banks. So if you deposit your life savings in one of their banks, they consider it theirs. If you take Aunt Irma's emerald necklace and take it to a bank deposit box in one of their banks, they consider it theirs. And it's totally up to them when they shut their doors and take everything. And they've given you notice of this. Okay, so there's two. All right. And now, most recently, they have herded all of the accounts in America, all the accounts that you think that you have in your local banks, all the accounts that you think that you have at your local credit unions. All of those accounts have been commandeered, migrated, and converted into what they're calling FedNow accounts. So you think that you've got your account at First National Bank of Memphis, okay? No, you don't. What you've got is a FedNow account with the Federal Reserve Bank that is in charge of your region. Okay? So all of this has been changed and converted without you knowing. Nobody came forward and said, hey, these Federal Reserve notes are worth nothing. They're just pieces of paper now. Nobody told you that back in 2009. Nobody told you that the banks are claiming to own everything that is deposited with them. And nobody told you that your account has been converted into a Federal Reserve account and that you're now dealing directly with the central bank. But I'm telling you that, and that is the truth. And now I want you to look at what happened with Hunter. We have our safety vault program, right? So you have got a currency that you're stuck using that is valueless. It is just an IOU from a bankrupt entity, and it is 100% guaranteed worth less than the paper it's printed on. Okay, it has only symbolic value, and yet your life savings and all of the contributions that you've made of your labor and your assets is supposedly tied up in this one worthless script. So we come forward, we publicly charter an American publicly chartered bank, and we issue the American Federation dollar, which is a gold asset-backed currency. And we say unto you, bring your Federal Reserve notes and exchange them for AFD before all this hits the fan, and you'll at least preserve your buying power and get back buying power that was lost over the years to inflation, and you'll have something that actually has an asset-backed value. So people brought their Federal Reserve notes into the portal account at, say, Citibank, and as the Federal Reserves came in and went into the bin in Citibank, they were credited over here in our bank, different jurisdiction, different kind of currency. It was exchanged for AFD. It's a currency exchange. You literally got something for nothing. And after the exchange, after it was credited as AFD in our bank on our side of things, then the Federal Reserve notes that were exchanged, right, are just sitting there in the portal account. Well, the instruction given to Hunter was leave that money there, or leave that currency there, in case somebody needs to do the reverse and cash out their AFD and get some Federal Reserve notes in the interim while these things are still being traded. You know, something comes up, you have an operation or a family member dies, or, you know, you lose your job, or things happen to human beings. So no matter how good a deal it is, if you need FRNs, you need FRNs, and you need to be able to exchange those. So I told Hunter to just leave that account, that portal account, accumulating FRNs, and then if anybody had an emergency and they had to change back to FRNs for something, the FRNs were there and we could just give them a check on that account. Well, apparently Hunter was pilfering FRNs that had already been exchanged for AFD out of that portal account. Right. However, he can't be charged for stealing because why? Because Federal Reserve notes have only symbolic value. So you can't get him for stealing. The federales are going after him for stealing and then not paying federal income tax on what he pilfered. But we don't have federal income tax, right? Okay, so that's not something that we can claim either. So what the things that we can go after Hunter for are fraud, malfeasance, aggravated identity theft, things of that sort, which are crimes we can indict him for. But then we have to take our indictment to his district attorney. And it's totally up to the district attorney whether he's going to prosecute Hunter or not. So once again, you need to get your courts set up. We need to enforce our own public law. And we need to find the ways and means to put an end to these con games where they pretend to be us.
Okay, now for the next part of that question. Will prosperity accounts be opened, accessible for real-time usage? Okay, I actually right now I got a group of guys, really intelligent, smart guys, and we are trying to figure out how to do exactly that, as well as trying to get them sorted out into individual assemblies and trying to make it so you all have access real-time usage. It's not fast, it's not quick. We're basically having to start from scratch with it, but we've got the framework started. I'm not going to give you a timeline because I'd just be lying to you. And I don't do that. So it'll be there as soon as I can bloody well make it, with getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night.
And we got more people coming on to help. So it will work out. It's just that this was admittedly a very disappointing setback. It has caused some inconvenience, but our bank is squeaky clean. Our bank didn't do anything wrong. It was entirely on Hunter's side of the deal that all the dirt went down.
Okay, next question. Should we try to get our documents from our accounts and the ones who put FRNs in the vaults? Well, you already advised those people just now. But should they try to get their documents off of GFG from their accounts?
We already have it all. We went in and we took all of the records. We took all the account records, and we were able to confirm Josh Pelletier was the guy who did the actual exchange and accounted for the AFD. So he was able to confirm that he got all 5 of the last transactions going through the portal. So we have all of your accounts. We have all your account information. We have your declarations. All that stuff got transferred successfully before they shut it down. See, they had to shut down too in order to convert to their look-alike, sound-alike British Crown version.
Okay, next question. Can an ASN/ASC file for Social Security benefits, and if so, will it affect our status?
Yes, you can file for Social Security benefits and receive Social Security benefits. Those are just, I would suggest that you call them payments or some other word than benefits, because benefits implies that it's a welfare gift and that it can be taken away from you. So you want to start, they do these little linguistic tricks and get people used to saying it's benefits. It's not benefits. It's, a pension interest or a insurance interest, or, I would call it an insured interest. Okay, you have an insured interest in the Social Security program and administration. But yes, you can go ahead and you can claim that. And, once you're retired, you're retired. You can go anywhere, do anything, wear play clothes, you can get rid of your high heels and your A-line skirt. So once you are retired, and I assume if you're applying for normal Social Security, you're now at the retirement age. They can't say anything about your political status or make any presumptions about it at all. You can go anywhere. And you can be in any jurisdiction that you please, and they still owe you whatever they owe you.
Okay, next question. Anna, how do we report a crime? Who do we report it to when the police, the lawyers, and judges and other officers and officials are all corrupt? How do we hold them accountable?
Oh, well, we're back to the enforcement question, aren't we? Well, we set up our own courts. We elect our own sheriffs. We train our own continental marshals. We train our own state militias. And then we finally have the means of addressing the problem through the system that was set up prior to the Civil War, where we can indict their no-goodniks and force a trial in our court when they have offended us. That's the way it should be done. That's the way it could be done if we get off our tufts and actually bring our courts forward and bring our deputies and our elected sheriffs and the rest of the positions of our courts into play. That's what we need to do. The current system is in evident conflict of interest. Say that we have a crooked corporate bar association lawyer who schemes to steal property from one of us. Well, we can bring together a grand jury, we can indict that person, but then it goes to the district attorney, right? And the district attorney looks at it and says, do I want to bring charges against my fellow bar member? Understanding that I don't have to. And he goes, oh, hell no, I don't want to bring charges against Joey. I've known Joey for 20 years. We're good buddies. And so he just ignores our grand jury indictment because we have no enforcement. We have no way on our side of it to go pick the guy up and put him in jail. And that's the way it's been running. That's, they have the ultimate advantage. They have the home court advantage, plus they have the conflict of interest vantage point where they can just ignore us, ignore what their people have done to us, because we don't have a sheriff. We don't have 153 deputies ready to go down to the courthouse and stand there and go, what the? Okay? So you want enforcement, folks? I'm telling you what you need to do. Otherwise, we have our courts of record. We can get a conviction on the record. We can take that conviction to the commercial courts and we can, make claims and file liens against these phony corporations. But, the entire system is so fraught and riddled with fraud. What good does it do to file a claim against a fraudulently constructed corporation? What we've really got here is institutionalized fraud. So, short of taking up arms and shooting people, the one way that we have forward is to bring forward our own courts and take up the problem of providing ourselves with our own enforcement.
Okay, next question. How do we apply to volunteer for the Federation?
Well, I guess the best way is to just, send a resume, who you are and what not, and what you would like to do. And do we have a file of resumes and people that have come forward over the years, and when these positions develop or as they become vacated, then we fill those positions, we vet people, and go from there.
All right. Flock cameras. About these cameras, is there anything that you can do to stop these cameras from being installed in all 50 states?
Well, with something like that, it's okay, they have the right to install flock cameras, and they have the right to install flock cameras and surveillance their employees. They do not have the right to install flock cameras and surveillance us. And so it becomes a problem of, you've got kind of an adverse right situation where your right to privacy overcomes their right to surveil their employees. I'm sorry, folks, I have to take this.
All right. We'll give on just a moment here, people.
Okie dokie.
Is the sky falling?
Sky is falling. But
Okay.
it's falling up, so it's great. Okay, we're in good shape.
Okay, good. All right, next question. I have several unused LLCs from old businesses with the Arizona state government. Do I need to revoke these, or can I just continue to ignore them? They're still shown as active with the government.
Well, you can always go in and go to the state office where you registered these LLCs and shut them down. There's really no reason why you can't do that. There are provisions for dissolving an LLC.
Okay, next question. Bambi Keems is still in Forsyth County Jail for 8 months since her last appearance, March 3rd of this year. The state court is wanting Bambi to have a psych test. She has refused the exam. The state says they will not move forward unless she has the exam. The only question she has ever asked the state courts is, what jurisdiction are you operating from? They will not answer the question. What is the next move?
Well, if they don't answer the question, then it's presumed they have no jurisdiction. If I were her, I would claim the idiot's defense. If they think that she needs a psych evaluation, I would simply say, well, I declare myself incompetent. I'm a jester. I'm not going to belabor anything. If you think I'm nuts, I'm nuts. But I'm not a harm to myself or anyone else, so let me go. That's called the jester's defense. And it's quite effective. I've known quite a few people that after spending years of incarceration and not being able to get out of jail, have simply pled the jester's defense and declared themselves incompetent to stand trial in that venue, and they've been immediately let go. So if I were Bambi Kimball, that's what I would do at this point. It's apparent that they're going to try to declare her incompetent anyway, and at the point that they declare her incompetent, they will assign a guardian, and then the guardian will get to tell her everything that she ever needed to know about life and existence, and will poke their nose into her business and just be an absolute pain in the butt. So why not declare yourself incompetent and say, well, I'm not competent to stand trial in this court, and when they offer a defense attorney, well, you're not competent to decide whether or not he's doing a job of representing you or not. It's a funny thing, but the jester's defense has been used successfully on at least 3 high priority cases where they really, really, really wanted to keep this person in jail, and they couldn't. They had to honor that. So that's what I would do.
Okay, next question. If nationalizing all the corporations solves all of our problems, why haven't we done this years ago? How do we hold the principles of the corporations for the harm they've caused? I don't see how any of this happens without our military enforcing laws that have been broken. How do we get the military back under the control of the American people? Thank you for all that you do.
Well, honey, baby, darling, dear, this has been one of the core discussion points of this evening's webinar, and that is, how do you get enforcement? You get enforcement by forming up your courts, serving as jurors, serving as justices, serving as sheriffs, serving as continental marshals, serving as deputies, serving as members of the state assembly militia, and that's how you get enforcement. And there's no other way to get enforcement that doesn't involve death and destruction. So this is the pathway that you want to follow. And what was the second part of the question there? It was distinctly different. It wasn't about the enforcement issues. Shannon?
Sorry, I was reading an email myself. Anna, are they building the data centers in Alaska? And if so, how are you fighting back against it? We have a big problem with these centers in Louisiana and a land grab running people out of their homes for these things. Thank you.
Well, you use your counties, or in your case, your parishes, and you get the parish people with their backs up and saying no, and then that's it. The data centers don't have any more right to do anything. So you use your county government, you use your local government to back off the data centers. The states won't do it, but the county and local people can.
Okay, next question. Is there any way we can require, under some penalty, that it is required that any company associated with the British Crown must have a BC at the end of their name?
Well, getting them to conform and obey anything at this point is really difficult. They've been operating as a mercenary force on our shores for so long that they have no respect for law. They have no respect for fairness, nothing. They're just criminal. So trying to force them to do anything, it almost has to be a trick to force them to do something because it's actually for their benefit. It's much easier for us to impose some particular practice on ourselves that is beneficial to us with respect to them. But the very best thing we can ever do is get rid of them. Just get rid of their mercenary functions, period, at all. And then a lot of this falls into place, including the military. Because if they can no longer operate as a mercenary force, they are forced to come back and become a true national military force. It's all that's left to them. And that's one of the reasons that the new public law that we are bringing forward is a good stroke. It's a good thing to do. We may not be able to enforce it, but we can bring enough pressure on the principals that are responsible to hopefully get it enforced through diplomatic means. We basically embarrass the hell out of them.
Oh, embarrassment, always a good tactic. You always ask us what we want. That may be a tough question for some people, but most of us, regardless of age, have been poisoned and deceived by the crooked doctors trained by the Rockefeller medical schools who have been handing out petroleum products that have harmed our bodies. So, where do we stand for the medbeds and naturopathic medical doctors to come back to help heal us all?
Well, we were able to track down where the med beds are. They are basically an experimental unit that has been used extensively for regrowing limbs. And we did locate the experimental medical center where the program is located. But as things go, it is experimental. It is not a commercially scalable technology at this point. That part of it was just more FUPA. But it does exist, and it does work wonders, and it can be scaled up. It can be made available to the public. That much I can tell you. But the military is largely the part of the problem because they've been operating as a for-profit mercenary force, and they're not really our military. They have a contract to defend this country, right? But they do all these other things on the side. They're operating as a true mercenary force, and they've been operating that way for so long that they're quite crooked and corrupt. I hate to say that, but, you know, pay attention to me when I tell you that Lincoln put the military in charge of this whole shebang back in April of 1863. So everything that you see, both good and bad, is a result of the military. They're the ones that led us into this debacle.
Okay, next question. It is the principle of law that law can do no harm. And because a corporation is entirely created by legal agreement, thereby a creature of law, its actions and products must be used to benefit mankind. The idea behind a patent is to give a period of time for one to recover and profit from the investment in research. It is not to squirrel away products that would benefit mankind. A corporation that is not actively putting into the market the patents it holds should lose the patents. Why shouldn't we cancel all patents that have been shelved by corporations, especially the mercenary military businesses, and as many patents have been obtained by research funded by the people's credit? Why shouldn't we also cancel all patents which are of corporate origin, especially the mercenary military corporation and businesses?
Well, once again, you have the issue of suppressed patents, and they have been suppressed under the pretext that it was for the national security, but which nation are they talking about? Not ours. And so all of this is corrupt. All of it is fraudulent. All of it is. The corporations themselves have no right to exist. The corporations have done harm to the living people. They have operated in a criminal fashion, and they deserve to be liquidated for the most part. At least so far as I can see. I mean, there are a lot of mom and pop corporations out there that don't deserve liquidation, but many of the corporations that we see, that we think of day to day, most definitely do. The easiest way is to lawfully convert them all and bring them back under land law. That's the easiest solution. Some of these corporations just flat out need to be liquidated. DARPA needs to be liquidated. Pfizer needs to be liquidated. Dow, Monsanto, Bayer, they need to be liquidated. There are certain corporations in every sector that just need to be liquidated. And in those cases, the corporate veil needs to be removed, and the shareholders and the governors of these organizations need to face the consequences of what they've done. So there are basically two kinds of corporations: those that need to be lawfully converted and brought back under land law so that they functioned correctly and don't cause harm to people, or those that need to be liquidated straight up, and the wealth of the perpetrators needs to be seized upon for the solace of the victims. Not that any amount of money can bring back your dead daughter or your grandson who died as a fetus because of things that were called vaccines that weren't.
Okay, next question. Good evening. I always wonder when we'll be notified about how to access our accounts and the new bank. We covered that earlier. I do not want to be affiliated with the fraudulent system. So how will this work? And will we be getting new names for said bank?
Yes. It'll come out as a new bank, and it will be carrying the description unincorporated. So from now on, the way to distinguish your American business enterprises is unincorporated. And that will, they may not put their incorporated on the tail end of their names, their description, but we'll put it on ours religiously so that they don't have the option of saying that they're unincorporated when they're incorporated. You see, we can't force them to put a incorporated at the back of their business names, but we can say unincorporated.
Okay, next question. Will we ever see justice for our children that have been taken from our families fraudulently and given up for adoption without favor to their own kinship by the corrupt and evil family courts? Let me know where and when. I'll have the matches and gas.
There are some things that you just cannot ever make up for. There are deaths, and there are maimings, and there are things that are lost as a result of the corruption and the meddling and the coercion and the evil of these corporations that simply can never be made up by any kind of justice that you can think of that a court ruled by mortals could ever provide. I mean, you look at some of the things that people suffer, and there is no equivalent in money. There's no equivalent in honor. There's absolutely nothing you can do. I mean, you can't give somebody's son back after they've been killed in a senseless mercenary conflict. And even if you give them $1 million or, whatever, it's not the same. It's not equivalent. It's not anything that can come close to what you lost. You see? And it's the same way when Child Protective Services gets an anonymous tip and decides to blow your life and your family apart and steal your children, literally kidnap them into a foreign jurisdiction of the law and subject you to a kangaroo court and force you to pay them exorbitant amounts of money for caring for your children when you're working hard every day and basically being enslaved by these jokers, so that you get a whole 7 minutes a day with your kids on average. Those kinds of evils you cannot make up. There's nothing that you can do to punish the evildoers enough, and there's nothing that you can do to make it up to those who've been harmed. The best we can do is figure out a better way of dealing with circumstances wherein kids really do need help. And get rid of the system that we've had, because the system that we've had has been nothing but a profit-making machine.
Like I said, matches, gasoline, DuPont spinners.
Well, certainly the organizations that have existed need to be destroyed, but there's still a need for kids who are in terrible situations to be rescued. And it remains a problem for us culturally, socially, in every way you could think of, as, where do you draw the line?
Okay, next question. I have a loan through a savings bank for a musical instrument purchased January 2025. Payments have been made through the bank's online portal until June 2026. July 2026, I was directed to re-register on their new payment portal. I re-registered. However, none of my account payment history, loan terms, or balance information appeared, nor any of my personal information except my account number and payment amount. That information was shown on their previous payment portal, no longer active for payments. I called the bank. I informed them that I could not utilize the new payment portal because of the missing account information and that it was fraudulent. Please advise how I should view this circumstance. What remedial actions are required, if any? Should I use the new payment portal? Thank you for your knowledge and time, Anna.
Well, I certainly wouldn't use the new payment portal. I would go down to the bank and sit on the president's desk until I had answers that satisfied me. It could be a scam. It could be a new loan servicer. Could be any number of things, but you need to go down to the bank itself and find out what's going on and, come to an agreement with them about how you can pay this without your very legitimate concerns.
Okay, next question. I plan on purchasing my first home when the new bank system is live. Is there a specific way I should sign paperwork for the home and can transfer the purchased home to our upcoming real home/land ownership system you mentioned before that's outside of the British system? Thank you.
Well, what we recommend is that you do a title search all the way back and make sure that you can get a clean title. It's called a clear title to your prospective property. And then you go one step beyond that back to the land patent or grant underlying the title system, which came into being in the 1930s. And then you take all of those titles and all of that other information, these other descriptions and surveys and whatnot, and you claim them as part of your patent. Okay? And then you have a unabridged claim to that property. And that's how we do that. There's an entire process. You have to post it for 60 days in public minimum. And so Bucolic Law has that whole system set up so that you can do that. So I would go onto I'd go onto their website and take a look and, get the ideas of what I'm going to have to do to get this property properly conveyed into my jurisdiction. Shannon? Oh, Shannon.
I'm here. Sorry, I was freaking hit the mute button like an idiot. Sometimes the new platform is I'm still getting used to her. As a state national on Florida, I want to create a homeless raffle or lottery. I do not want to go through the hassle of establishing a 501c. And there are many statutes regulating raffles and lotteries. My idea is simple. Sell 2 million $1 lottery tickets. Then have a drawing with a $1 million prize. Then you have $1 million remaining to create homeless communities with teeny houses, vegetable gardens, and shops for the homeless to sell veggies, crafts, and art to the public. Can I do this without jumping through all of the de facto hoops?
Actually, there's someone who's already done that and has hopped through all of the de facto hoops. His name is Elder St. Jeffrey. It's a great idea. Why don't you send me an email and I'll put you in contact with him. He's already got these wonderful self-sustaining communities set up in various parts of the world, and they're working out.
Okay, next question, and probably our last one at this rate for the night. I haven't heard anything more about Anna taking the reins of the civil service. Is there an update on that?
Okay. Taking over the civil service? We were supposed to do
what's
that.
The updates on you taking it over?
It was supposed to happen in June. Things just keep happening. One more reason to delay movement. And the military is among the worst of the foot draggers because these guys are afraid of a civilian government. I can only put it that way. They are afraid that we're going to do something to them, or, I don't know. The whole issue is who owns what? What really belongs to the people? What belongs to the individual? And who can legitimately lay claim to the land underneath everything, And there have been so many arguments back and forth and so many different groups and different rationales. It's just, it's been a horrible, long wrangle. And we thought we had something worked out that would work and leave, the nations intact and let people have their lives, right? And just at that moment, the issue of really what's underlying all of these modern nations. Well, in most of Europe, what's underlying those quote unquote modern nations is what we call Tartaria. So then it comes up, what is, who has the ownership of Tartaria? You couldn't make this stuff up. You couldn't if you tried. And yet, it has to be brought forward. So now we have to go all the way around the ring around the rosy of that again, where, okay, who are the indigenous people of Europe? Where did they come from? When did they get there? Is there anybody who has a older claim? Does it matter if there's anyone who has an older claim? This has been going on in the back rooms away from the public for generations. And just when they thought they had it all settled, then the entire ownership of Europe comes up. And it turns out that there are really no people called the Germans. There are really no people called the French. There are really no people called the Danes. So now, even though there's nothing standing in the way of us settling our stuff, there are questions about settling Europe. And so all of that turned into another roiling ball of snakes fighting each other. And that has again delayed settlement of everybody else's estates. And I have no idea how that is going to be resolved, because essentially, when you get right back down to it, all of those people with all of those ferocious nationalist identities and even different languages all came from the same original group. And so guess we just have to wait and see how that whole big argument comes out. Either that, or at some point, I'm hoping that the military generals get sick enough of the way things have been, so that they actually get off the fence and do something right. But short answer is we probably won't get control of the civil service until after the ownership of Europe is settled.
Okay, time for one last quick question, which made me chuckle a bit. Anna, do you want to be the president of the unincorporated United States?
Are you kidding?
That's the question.
What I've gone through. After what I've gone through, after what people have said about me, after 40 years of slogging through these trenches, do I want to be the president?
I thought you'd enjoy that question.
No, dear hearts. No, I want to get to a point in my life where everybody is trained up and being self-responsible and governing their communities and their lives, and I can just finally retire. Wouldn't that be a nice thought?
Well, I was tired yesterday and I was tired again today, so I think I was retired.
Yeah, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a nice little orchard and all you had to do is sort of, make sure there were enough bees around?
No, let's skip the bees. I'm allergic. I'll stick with cattle.
No, really, folks, we're all trying to get to that enviable place, whereas the Bible says, each unto his own house with his own fig tree, right? We all want to get to that part where the concerns of government no longer have to concern us and take up our lives. It's crazy that average people have been called upon to do all this work and for no pay or anything else, just to, assert their rights and control their destiny. All right? Now, I don't know who we can get to be president of the unincorporated United States.
Not it.
But that is an eventuality. And we need to be thinking about such things. We need to be training up our congressional delegations. We need to be looking for people who have the right mentality and character and vision and grasp of law and history. It won't be easy to find those candidates. So start looking among the people of your assemblies and in your communities, because you're going to need those folks. I'm 70 years old. I may not look it, I may not feel it, but I am. And I'm one of the younger people that is part of the Federation crew. So,
At 46, I'm the spring chicken.
He really is. He's the baby. So, give it some thought, folks. Search your hearts. Look among your members and associates and think about those questions, because it is coming. It may take another 5 years, but it's coming. And people need to be studying and thinking and learning and getting ready to shoulder these responsibilities. But yeah, that was a good laugh.
I thought you'd like to end on a good bit of clarity. All right. Well, I've got some brisket calling my name, and I'm sure you've got some in the kitchen left, unless Eric ate it all calling yours.
I think Pete got it. But anyway.
Hey, you got to try it this time at least.
Yes. Okay, guys. Have a wonderful week, everyone. We're working our tails off. You guys work your tails off, and then we'll get back together next week and compare where we're at again. Okay?